Grisly crimes from the past. A rifle at the party. The pre-Christmas staff party at New Zealand's Dunedin General Hospital was held on 12th of December 1954. Dr. John William Bill Saunders, 27-year-old medical officer, took Frances Kearney, a senior student at the hospital. Also present at the party was Dr. Florence Whittingham, a house sergeant who had been Saunders' fiancée. She went alone to the party, alone, that is, except for a .303 rifle. She arrived late while the party was getting into its swing. Florence Whittingham stayed in her own apartment, writing to a friend a letter that she never in fact posted. Its sentiments were bitter and despondent. "I can no longer cope, and Bill makes things so miserable for me. There seems little left. I have so much pain." She came after midnight, nursing her pain and her rifle. Groups of partygoers had by now crowded into the quarters of one of the hospital's surgeons. Florence Whittingham found her former lover in the corridor, and suddenly, above the chatter and the clink of glasses in the living room, voices could be heard raising in anger outside. There was shouting and screaming. A shot detonated, and the guest rushed out into the corridor. For a moment, the scene was frozen, as in some nightmarish tableau. Dr. Saunders was kneeling, blood splattered on the floor. Florence Whittingham stood before him, and as the wounded man swore on his knees, she leaned forward to embrace him. She was babbling hysterically, "Bill, listen to me, Bill!" But the medical officer heard nothing as he slid dying from her arms. No one called for a doctor. The apartment was crowded with medics, but all of their expertise counted for nothing in the case of Dr. Saunders. He was dead before the stretcher arrived. The case stunned New Zealand. Explosions of love and despair were not expected in the sober, professional community of Dunedin, the South Island seaport founded by the Scottish Presbyterians. And although clearly a crime of passion, the affair had its perplexing features too. A rifle is no natural choice of weapon for suicide. Did Dr. Whittingham go to the party intending murder, or as she claimed, something else? Dr. Senga Florence Whittingham was 27, the same age as her former fiancé, and no one could deny that she had cause for grievance in the events leading up to the tragedy. She has taken up the post of house surgeon at Dunedin early in 1953, and her duties involved working closely with Dr. Saunders. Soon they formed a relationship which extended out of hours. As clearly as May 1953, the medical officer asked Florence to marry him, and she was only too happy to accept. In June, the couple went to see Saunders' mother and announced their engagement. They hoped for an early wedding, for Florence was expecting a baby. Mrs. Saunders had a reservation. It had been a lightning romance, and both had their careers to think about. Mrs. Saunders advised a period of reflection. They should not get married only for the baby's sake. If necessary, she declared, she would adopt it. In the event, there was no quick wedding, indeed, no wedding at all. After that meeting with Mrs. Saunders, the couple still went on seeing one another. But it seems to Florence that Bill's ardor had cooled. She sensed that he no longer wanted the baby. When asked about his feeling, Bill denied that he was falling out of love, but he was evasive about the future. That summer, Florence Whittingham procured an abortion. She knew immediately afterwards that a bond had been broken. Bill was clearly relieved, and in September, with no pressing reason for the marriage to go ahead, he broke off the engagement. Florence was in despair. Even in the most supportive environment, an abortion may leave deep emotional scars. Had the child been truly unwanted, the loss might have been easier to bear. But this baby had been joyfully anticipated, by Florence at least, as the fruit of love and in the promise of a shared future. She still loved Dr. Saunders, still urgently wanted to marry him. But far from easing the relationship, her sacrifice had left her bereft of her lover too. For Dr. Saunders, breaking the engagement recalled a more carefree way of living. Once again, he became Dunedin's popular and very eligible bachelor medical officer. It was when the bitter realization of a double loss dawned that Florence Whittingham bought the 303 rifle. She told a friend who had noticed the gun in her rooms that it was for her brother. In fact, Dr. Whittingham had no brother. But if a sudden urge to violence provoked the purchase, it seems to have faded away. She took no immediate action, enduring instead long months of waiting and of faint hope. Perhaps Saunders' love would quicken again? It never did. Through all of 1954, Florence Whittingham was prey to Black Depression, which eroded her vitality. She became a rat in the corridor of the General Hospital, attending as capably as ever to her parents, but inwardly broken in spirit. Her health was affected and she underwent a major operation. To combat her loss of vitality, she began taking insulin, a drug normally prescribed for diabetics. It proved no cure, though, for lovesickness. The affair was over, and no amount of pleading could bring Dr. Saunders back. Yet, she still saw him practically daily in the hospital, confident, ambitious, and relishing his restored bachelorhood. What provoked the climax was a trivial enough event. Florence Whittingham learned that her ex-lover would be taking Miss Kearney to the staff party at Christmas. A sense of outrage seems to have seized Florence, for she phoned her rival and in a near shriek declared, "This is the mother of Bill Saunders' child speaking." No doubt a pent flood of recrimination was at her lips, but she got no chance to release it. While Miss Kearney identified the caller's voice as Dr. Whittingham's, she prudently hung up. Florence Whittingham was shut out now, shut out of her lover's life and his future, and it was in a mood of total frustration and despair that she had recourse to the rifle. In the letter she wrote to her friend before taking the gun to the party, Dr. Whittingham began, "I would like it to be of special comfort to my mother and Bill's mother." By implication, she was considering some kind of dramatic action if special comfort would be required. But the rest of the text expressed, in broken paragraphs, only misery. "I have had a year of hell. I love him, but my pleadings are useless." There was no specific threat. After the sensational shooting at the party, she was to say quietly, "It's the first time I have been at peace for a year." And later, "I loved him. I couldn't stop loving him. I wanted to frighten him, that's all. Just to frighten him. I didn't mean to shoot him. Just frighten him, that's all." When a crime is committed in a state of high emotion, the word intention becomes opaque. Dr. Whittingham had brought to trial for willful murder in February 1955, and the prosecution had a formidable case. The accused had, after all, taken a loaded rifle to a party. The letter she had written was shown in evidence. A ballistic expert, moreover, testified that the 303 could not easily be fired by chance. In defense, Florence Whittingham's counsel contended that she had pointed the gun at Saunders only as a threatening gesture. The discharge was accidental. Obviously, there was great sympathy for the accused when the story of her abortion and operation was made known. But assessing her precise intention at the moment of discharge called for careful consideration. At the end of the 6-day trial, the jury deliberated over his verdict for more than 7 hours. Returning to the crowded courthouse, the members found Dr. Whittingham guilty of manslaughter, but added a strong recommendation to mercy on the grounds that the rifle was fired accidentally. She received a 3-year sentence. In retrospect, the case is as hard to assess as it was in the Supreme Court building, but the verdict was a fair one. However, the gun went off. Its purpose at the party was not to destroy a life. It was brought to shock the victim into recognition of wrong love and misery endured. Behind the echo of the gunshot, a voice was calling, "Bill, listen to me! Bill, listen to me!" It was the voice of love locked out. Thank you for watching. If you have enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe and leave a comment, as it helps with YouTube algorithm to grow this channel. You will find similar contents in my other videos. Have a safe day. Signing off.